All right. Hello. Welcome to the Human Frequency live stream. I think this is our first official live stream. We had a test and then we had another test. And we're still kind of getting the hang of this, so please bear with us. It's good to be here. I'm glad that we're here to answer questions. We will have a Q&A at the end. We are going to talk for a little bit. So to anyone who is here, thank you for showing up. Hope you are having a lovely Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, it's definitely afternoon. Look at that sun streaming in. Wow, I wasn't expecting that. But that's what happens when you test the camera about 30 minutes before a show. But see, we're still learning. So we're doing this at this time of day where usually we record in the mornings, but we want to make sure that more people can be here and enjoy the show. So we're doing it in the afternoon. Anyway, I wanted to let everybody know that on Saturday night, last Saturday, I was on this amazing radio show called Into the Parabnormal. If you want to check it out, if you missed it, the video is up on our website, thechembo.com, so please check it out. It was all about artificial intelligence, the next steps in the energetic war. It's all about all that we're dealing with right now after having done so much work with Organite gifting and these next steps towards just eradicating this parasitic presence. So it was pretty cool because it's a UFO show, a paranormal show. So they were really into these topics and, not a lot of skepticism, just people were very into knowing more about what's going on behind the scenes.
Right. General open-mindedness and also not being just completely turned off 100% to the idea of extra dimensional beings. So it was very good. And also we have a coupon code now, a new coupon code. It's for the upcoming, I think we have it through Valentine's Day. And what it is
it's Valentine 22. And you can get free shipping on orders over $40. So that means a lot of stuff, like my book and many of our pyramids. There's very, very well priced Organite too. You don't have to spend $40 to get Organiite at our site. We got Tower Busters for $10. So please check out our website, thechembo.com. If you like Organite, there's some behind me right here. There's some pyramids. We make all kinds of Organiite. So go check it out and use the coupon code if you're ordering more than $45. Or what did I say, $40 worth of stuff? Yep. My book is $45. It's a little more expensive than I wanted it to be, but it's a full color textbook. So it's a really beautiful book. So I hope you go check it out. And also I'm going to be putting a discount on all hearts. So starting on January 31st for the month of February, we're going to have all of our heart-shaped Organite discounted. So check that out too. We've got pendants for pets and people.
So that's Valentine 22, and that's not case sensitive. So that is our coupon code through February 14th. We are here today to talk about a very important topic that we have kind of just like swept under the rug for the longest time, but I feel that it's important to talk about. I know you do too. It's a huge problem, controlled opposition and just disinformation in general. It's become a huge problem. And this has happened. This has been the case since way before COVID. So don't think that this is a new thing in the last 23, 24 months or so, because many people are they're searching online for answers. They're searching everywhere. There's never more than nowadays. But sometimes the problem with that is that people want answers so badly that they'll believe just about anything. And that's a tremendous problem, because we want answers, we want them now, and we want them to be easy too. We don't want to have to put in too much work or anything. No, we don't want to read books. We don't want to do real world tests and experiments. And we certainly don't want to take the time to make or build something. Now that's too much effort. We don't want to do anything that takes that amount of effort. So combine that with the energy weapon that everybody carries, that is designed to reinforce that kind of laziness. So that will put you into the most impressionable mental state. That's right where the disinformants want you. And they need you in that state. They need you to be in that state constantly, because that's how they perpetuate their various lies, diversions, and boogeymen.
Yeah, that is true. And I get a lot of emails from people suggesting that I watch something and they never really suggest books to me. I've noticed a lot of videos on YouTube, and what I've discovered from all of the things that I've been sent is that nobody should ever watch anything on YouTube ever again. So if that means you don't watch this channel, then so be it.
That's a sacrifice we're willing to make, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's just too much confusion out there. So if you can't discern between truth and lies, and I mean, I'm not trying to be insulting, but they're very, very deceptive, and they're very, very sneaky in how they go about disseminating disinformation, and they make it sound real, they make it sound plausible. But I would rather people just read books and stop looking at YouTube, because in order to really learn, you've got to read the Bible, you've got to read books about things like science. Wilhelm Reich wrote books on orgonomy. There are ways of learning this stuff without looking at YouTube, and I think that it's just a huge distraction. What YouTube is great for is tutorial videos, how-to troubleshooting. If you want to know what that weird noise your fridge is making and how to fix it, if you want to know how to grow something, repair something, these are very good things that you can find on YouTube, and there's a lot of nice people out there that have put this stuff together.
Yeah, I can attest to the fridge repair thing firsthand. I did that. Our fan condenser motor was on the fritz. It was making a hell of a noise and just wasn't working properly. So I watched a little 6, maybe 7-minute tutorial video on how to remove it and how to install a new one, and I did it myself, and it worked perfectly. So that's a perfect example of the kind of thing that YouTube is good for.
It's good for non-controversial informational videos. It's good for music, humor, nostalgia, stuff from when you were a kid. So I'm not saying that this platform isn't great, and I'm not saying I don't appreciate the opportunity to do this broadcast live and explain things and take questions and all of this. I think it's a great way to get information out there, but it's also used by a lot of disinformants to confuse you on very important issues, particularly the topic that we work on, which is orgone energy. Chemtrails is a huge part of the disinfo campaign, and YouTube is full of that kind of stuff. And of course, mainstream sources are full of disinfo, but even alternative sources are. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And it's about time we finally brought this up, because it's just not a great source for information on certain topics like spirituality and religion, science and health. YouTube is horrible on those topics. And I would say history, that could be a hit and miss kind of thing. A lot of the history has been manipulated too. And law is absolutely, it's not great. No good. However, if you're just looking for mainstream information, like you just want to know really, really basic legal stuff, there are licensed professionals with videos on YouTube. It's sort of like more how-to stuff. They can help you with that stuff. But if you're looking for more obscure stuff, it's just no good for that. And if you're looking for legal tricks, absolutely no good.
The legal tricks part is where the most problem is. And hey, good job.
That's my hand. That took care of the sun.
We need one of those guys.
Yeah.
I can't even remember what they're called. It's funny. I worked as an extra for 3 or 4 years, and I don't even remember what they're called. But legal tricks, you do not want to rely on YouTube for any of that. But if it's something simple, like you were saying, is it where you want to know the definition of something in the legal system, that's useful, because there are professionals that will educate you on those concepts. So,
by the way, we don't do legal tricks. We follow the law. So if you're looking for people who know like loopholes and ways around stuff, I can't help you with that. And that is mostly what's out there. Is in the legal world, you'll either find mainstream sources, which is a good thing, because let's say you want to know some real estate terms or something that you just don't understand. There are professionals out there that can tell you what that means. Yeah. But if you're looking for ways around stuff, there's a lot of people out there that are there to deceive you. They know you want ways around stuff, and they will give you all kinds of disinfo to make you fall into their traps. So we have to be really careful. Don't try to get around the law. Yeah. Definitely obey it.
Well, just to give one example, we get emails from people, and we see it in the comments section sometimes, where people are talking about the UCC1, and we had no idea what this was. We'd heard it thrown around just on forums and whatnot on the internet. So we actually looked it up. We went to a video and looked up what that is.
Right. There was a professional, I can't remember the site. It kind of doesn't matter. If you want to know what it is and you say, what is UCC1? you'll get a business guy that explains that it's something that a bank will, it's a form that a bank will fill out that's part of a loan to a business. So people ask me, what is UCC one? I don't know what it is. So I looked it up. If you're working for a bank and you're giving out a business loan to somebody with a company for equipment or upgrades or something like that, they will have this form that they fill out that protects them in case the borrower can't pay. So then,
in other words,
they'll
collateral.
be collateral, so they can do a repo or whatever. So how does this pertain to our work? Not at all.
Not in the slightest.
The reason people ask me that is I think that there are some scams out there related to this where people are trying to do scams and get away with stuff, and maybe it's illegal because everybody I know who does this ends up leaving the country. So if you're not a US bank and you're not issuing a business loan, then I think that the UCC one is not relevant. So that's the kind of stuff.
It's good for just mainstream legal stuff.
I learned what it meant. I'm glad to know what it means. I know it has nothing to do with us. And that's good enough for me.
And last but not least, the thing that YouTube is no good for is orgonomy. Anything about orgone energy, by and large. Now, don't get me wrong, you can find some things on there, but it's always, the truth is always mixed in with a lot of lies, and it's not always easy to discern what the lies are. But having studied orgonomy, you and I, for 7 going on 8 years now, it's just unbelievable. It's just page after page after page of people who may be well-intentioned. I will give you that, but people shouldn't be speaking on things that they're not qualified to talk about if they haven't done the appropriate research.
Orgonomy is our main topic. So that's what I'll focus on when I talk about disinfo. You can apply this to anything. You could apply this to health, any of the sciences. Of course, economics and politics is a huge source of disinfo because politics itself is the wrong path. So we get a lot of this activism that's associated with that. There's so many ways that people are putting out information that's for people like us, people who know the mainstream is, just all lies. But then there's a way to suck us into a different lie, and it always involves negativity and fear, the same tactics that the mainstream uses. So I think it's important today to talk a little bit about it. Let's use orgonomy as an example.
It's a perfect example because it's what we have the most time under our belts, for lack of a better expression. We've been in this for so long, and we've seen so many different things come and go that it's just, I think the number one rule is you have to automatically assume that anything is disinfo, and you have to go into it with that in mind until and unless the facts prove themselves to hold up under examination.
Yeah, and I didn't used to think this way. Back in around 2012, when Gabe and I were first becoming very, very aware of chemtrails, that's what we thought of it as back then. We didn't know that it was energetic warfare. We saw stuff up there. Somebody told me they're spraying us to make us stupid. That made total sense to me. So I went and looked into it. When I found geoengineeringwatch.org and stuff like that, of course, that left me feeling hopeless. So back in 2012, I felt horrible about the whole thing. In 2013, we started to discover orgonite, but we're very skeptical and hadn't tried it yet. We were totally in that fear matrix, and it was all caused by controlled opposition. They already knew about orgonite in 2012. Don Croft and them and George Ritchell, they had been doing it since...
George Ritchell had been at it for 10 years at
that point. And Don Croft even earlier than that.
10 years ago, we were in a very bad place mentally and emotionally. Like we bought the whole script, hook, line, and sinker, everything. Carnicom, Chris and Megan, the everything Dane Wigington talked about at the time. What in the world are they spraying? All of those things, everything.
Now,
we just bought it.
If they can't prove it, and they didn't prove it, but I believed it. If they can't prove it, then it is disinfo. They never were able to prove that the chemtrails were aluminum, barium, and strontium. They never were able to prove that. All we have is hearsay from people who work for the government. They're saying this, and they're keeping their government jobs. If they're saying this to us and keeping their jobs, then it would stand to reason that the government is okay with them telling us this, or maybe even wants them to tell us this. So we've learned a lot since 2012. And in fact, we found out pretty much in 2015.
Well, that's the thing. We first made Organite in April of 2014, and over the course of the next year or so, that's when we really started to figure that out. And of course, I attribute that to the very Organite that we were making for just sort of getting our brain wheels turning. By the time middle of 2015 rolled around, we were starting to get some pretty clear signals that these were deliberate disinformants that were working not only to keep people in a state of fear, but to make sure that the topic of orgonomy was never talked about in any capacity, not even to ridicule it, but to just keep it out of the discussion entirely.
Yeah, and this was the big wake-up call. Was in 2015 I started to really notice what Gabe's talking about. They're sweeping it under the rug. Like, let's say I put a comment, on Geoengineering Watch's article, and I would say, there's a solution to this. We have Organite for this. Wilhelm Reich discovered orgone energy. It cleans the sky. It brings rain. I would even mention something like someone said something about Morgellons disease, which I don't think is necessarily a real disease. I've never seen any proof of this either. But I said, whatever the disease is, chlorine dioxide solution cures it. These comments were removed. So I had this feeling like, okay, something's definitely wrong here. And Certainly. Then when we went up to Grass Valley in August of 2015 to do a public talk about orgone energy, and there just so happened to be a geoengineeringwatch.org event going on in Reading. So we made the trip to Reading for that event as well, and we were there to give out information on orgone energy and orgonite, and that was what our plan was. But before we left, I had planned it. I even put out a little email blast about it to the people who were going to be at our event in Grass Valley, and I got a call from Dane Wigington himself telling me that he caught wind of it
that day.
He knew I had my number, but I think someone gave it to him. But I had talked to him before. I'd met him at Conscious Life Expo, and somebody told him about it. He called me. He said, "You can't do it. We'd lose our government and military contacts if you did this. They don't want to lose their public speakers, all of whom came from the government and military." And he said that they would have us forcibly removed by the police
if we showed up and did it.
So that was the big wake up call to me, was 2015. So it's been many, many years since I've known that the chemtrail activism, anything with the name Watch or Skywatch in it, is disinfo, and it is controlled opposition, because they deliberately will not allow discussions of orgonite or orgone energy, period. So that's a huge
We
thing.
did it anyway, by the way. This is in Sharon's book, but we ended up going up there and disseminating, I don't know, 150 flyers at intermission. Then the organizers caught on and kind of blew the whistle on the whole thing, and we had to get out of there. But we did end up doing it. So all in all, it was a success, and that was a huge wake up call for us. That because we had our suspicions, of course, but that was the first time that we had concrete evidence that yes, they are deliberately suppressing this.
And they're not the only ones. So there's so much suppression of orgone energy. That's our topic. That's what we do. We distribute orgonite. We watch the changes in the environment. We report on it. And the cover up on this is huge. Even things that you would think, I hate to say this is in my book too. So, I'm going to say it on YouTube, so more people are probably going to hear it. But, I was interviewed a few years ago, back in 2015, in fact, before this Occupy Geoengineering Watch event we were planning on doing, which was to just kind of blow the whistle on the whole thing. And they specifically told me when I was interviewed on Gaiam, before it became Gaia, that they wanted me to talk about chemtrails, but not that energy stuff. They didn't want me to talk about that energy stuff, just the chemtrails. So you could see that even the ones that were more informative, they really wanted to keep a lid on the orgone energy and orgonite. That's just, it's death to the media, to the parasites, to the governments, to everything.
On so many
levels. Yeah. All the events too. Contact in the Desert,
Yep.
Conscious Life Expo, all these things. We used to do these things.
And American Freedom Radio. We spent the better part of 2016 on that network, and we were very new at the time. We just that's when we started the Human Frequency early in that year, but we saw I can't even get into the list of things that that we saw, but by the time
it was huge. I mean, there were a lot of attacks directly against us, even from our own colleagues. What I'm saying is, and I'm not trying to name names, but I mean, some of this is in my book. But
it's not about
naming names. But what I'm pointing out is that all of these forums for information dissemination are very, very tightly controlled. So we have to be very careful about what we listen to, because there's a real lid on the solution. They don't want us to know about orgone energy. They don't want us to know about orgonite. So that's the main thing that we're here to say, is that be very, very careful about people who hide it, who talk about things like chemtrails without talking about orgone energy. They're hiding the solution, who tell you to go to the government and complain to them about it.
Even at the lowest levels. LA Skywatch is a perfect example.
It's really sad. I hate to say that, because I used to go to their meetings.
Anything with Watch or Skywatch in their name, I'm sorry to make such a blanket statement, but you got to take what they're saying with a grain of salt, because they're not giving you the full story.
Yeah.
And that's putting it gently.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I don't want to name names like that, but here's the thing, that not all of these people that I'm talking about are necessarily, and not everyone involved is necessarily a disinformant. They're not necessarily trying to disinform, but many people are misinformed and think that they're already qualified to teach things that they're not. And I will admit that back when I first started talking about chemtrails, I wasn't qualified to speak on it. But this was when I was very, very unknown and just had a blog, and I was basically anonymous. So in 2013, I started my blog. And I didn't know anything. I was just using it to post pictures of chemtrails to raise awareness. And I said a lot of things that weren't right. I've since corrected them. And actually, in my book, in my intro to my book, I explained there's two parts to my book. On the second part, it's just a collection of everything we've done over the years. I've written about everything we've done in the field. And I said there that I've left every blog entry up as I've originally written it, even when I didn't know correctly, because it's a journal of consciousness, to show how I once started out just like everyone else, scared of chemtrails, not knowing what's going on, and believing a narrative that was disempowering and negative. And look how far I've come now. We're erasing them from the sky. We're making rain everywhere. So you could do it too. I know many of you have. I'm getting wonderful reports from all over the place of great things that people have done with orgonite. So definitely keep doing it, and don't let the disinformants discourage you from it. They will tell you it doesn't work. Dane Wigington told me that he had some and it didn't work. This isn't true. It's just not true. He may not have known what to look for. And I'm not going to say all of these people are necessarily doing it on purpose, but many of them are, and many of them are working for the government.
Well, there's a difference. Sharon's going to read a little passage from her book in a moment, but I just want to take the time to make this clear, that there is a big difference between disinformation and misinformation. And by having a sharp brain and a clear mind, not adversely influenced by the energy weapon of the smartphone, you will be able to see when someone is deliberately lying or obscuring the truth or telling half-truths or feeding you diversions or whatever tactics they use. You'll be able to tell the difference between that and someone who just genuinely means well, but just doesn't quite have the full story yet and doesn't know what they're talking about, but they think that they do.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not coming down on that type of person. I just think that if you're going to teach something, definitely know it first. I kind of regret some of the things I used to say about chemtrails, more than 8 years ago, but I would say on the plus side, at least it was just kind of confined to my blog, and it does serve as a journal of consciousness to show how anyone can start in the fear matrix and move into a positive space and being able to solve these problems. So I left it up. Why not? It's a journal of consciousness, and I think that you can do it too.
And your book is largely about evolving from that fear-based mindset to a mindset of, wow, I can actually do something about this problem. And it just doesn't take many people to do this. If only 1% of people were gifting orgonite, this planet would change like that overnight. Well,
speaking of recommending books, and Keith, I would like to just briefly address what you said, that YouTube is, yes, YouTube used to be better. They definitely are censoring it more now. But it's not so much just the YouTube censorship that is the problem. That's a huge problem. But that's the mainstream media working to manipulate our minds. They want their narrative out there. But the problem is all of these alternative sources that we were talking about that are on YouTube and all the other platforms, BitChute, Odyssey, and you name it, they're also misinforming people. And whether or not they mean it, we are recommending that you go to the sources on everything. So I would say the source on law, it's the Bible. Sounds simplistic, but it's true. That's the source on law, and that'll help you understand the whole legal system as well. The source on orgone energy is Wilhelm Reich. That's why I recommend books. And I'm glad you still read. I wish more people did.
Yeah.
Wilhelm Reich's books are amazing if you really want to know about orgone energy. And by the way, they did the same suppression and censorship to him that YouTube does today to video makers. His books were banned. His books were burned, and that's the way they did it back in the 50s.
Yeah, 70 years ago, nothing has changed.
So
I recognize another name in the feed. Hi, Christine. Thank you for your support. And S. McMurrin, your vids are amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming to our live stream.
We appreciate the support very much. We don't... I could say it again and again and again. It's not enough. We do really, really appreciate everyone's support.
And thank you for being
years.
here.
Yes.
We're horrible promoters. We are trying harder. We cannot schedule YouTube live streams. Apparently, since we did our first test, it worked great. We scheduled it and came in. Everything worked. Then we tried again. We got locked out. Turns out that in the 1 week between doing that test and trying again, suddenly they're requiring that we use a new kind of software. I don't understand it. And so we're, instead of scheduling in advance, we're just letting you know, please see us on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific.
Yeah. There's no,
For now.
There's not much more horrible a feeling that I can think of. Well, that's not entirely true, but
I can tell you a couple of horrible feelings.
It's a terrible feeling to schedule your own live stream and not be able to get into your own live stream. It just boggles the mind.
Yeah. Well, my book mentions the two worst feelings, which are getting pulled over and getting a letter from the IRS. I don't think there's any two worse feelings than that. That's what the parasites feed on. But anyway, right now, we're going to be focusing on solutions to all these problems. And right now, we want to talk about the diversions. So there are actually several levels of controlled opposition. I'd like to help you recognize it and know when you're looking at it so that you don't just buy into it. This is my book, Invisible Soldiers, Silent War. And I wrote all about our work with orgone energy in this book. So there's a chapter here, False Prophets, the Controlled Opposition. And I outlined the 5 types of media and how they manipulate our minds.
That's spelled PROFITS, by the way.
So the first one is the one that's obvious. Everybody will already know this. If you're here, you already know mainstream media for the easily controlled. That's most of our families. That's TV network news, interview shows, newspapers, and popular magazines. Features the best known government actors and celebrities. This is the most basic and most popular outlet for information and entertainment, widely available to the largest audience. The mainstream media gives quick and easy answers to put the mind at rest so you can continue working, consuming, and providing food for the parasites. Stance on the energetic war. Those are contrails. That's the most basic level of disinfo that's out there, is the mainstream. And we all know that those are not contrails as we know them. That's pretty much a no-brainer if you're here today.
That's sort of you could think of that as their first level of defense against consciousness or against conscious evolution.
Now, there are others. You're probably going to know what type of things I'm talking about here. And we're delving into the alternative now. And not everything on this list is disinfo. They mix in their stuff with our stuff so that people don't know the difference. So there's plenty of people out there. The next one is alternative media with a polished look. There's plenty of alternative media out there with a polished look that is real, but there's plenty that isn't, and more of it isn't. So this includes internet TV networks with professional sets, makeup and wardrobe, alternative news websites, internet radio channels, and activism websites with a budget. Features the best known alt media personalities, lower level government actors, and alternative leaning celebrities who are outspoken on an issue which is alternative to the mainstream, like being against vaccines or believing in chemtrails. Now, the alternative media's stance on the energetic war is the government is spraying you with chemtrails. Write your representative and complain. So you see how it's just another version of the mainstream. And this includes a lot of stuff that I know people really enjoy. And it's really great that people are thinking alternatively now and thinking out of the mainstream. But if it's really super polished, and you got to look out for certain key things here. We'll get more into that, but particularly writing to the government, protesting, those kind of things. Watch out. Those are like red flags right there.
And I'll repeat what you said for those of us just joining. We fell for this years ago too. This isn't something that we were able to figure out on day one. This came about after years and years of being entrenched in this work and understanding just the crazy things that we would see.
Mm-hmm. And years of Organite gifting really unlocked our consciousness and allowed us to see these things, plus the attacks, even from who we thought we could trust. That really opened our minds. So those are the first two, obviously, mainstream, alternative. Number 3, YouTube conspiracy channels. There are major YouTube channels which appear to be, to the outsider, to be independent. Just someone with a webcam and a simple set. Some YouTube channels are sincere and some are not. If the host seems to have a lot of connections with the alternative media, they are likely also employed by them. If the channel has a huge number of subscribers from the get-go, this is also a red flag. At this level, you will see Organite being mentioned from time to time, but in a way which misinforms. There is still a push toward thinking that the government is behind chemtrails and that there is nothing we can do about it. There are also egregious lies in the area of orgonomy and our ability to heal the planet, such as that Organite is dangerous or just ineffective. Their stance on the energetic war, the government is spraying you with chemtrails and Organite might make it worse. I think you might know what I'm talking about if you've noticed some of these channels that will mention Organite, but will have somebody making it sound really stupid or really sad. You know, like somebody will just outright say, oh, that doesn't work. Or they'll just make it sound completely mystical and ridiculous or not explain the science of it. That's another way they do it.
There's many tactics.
Now it gets even more obscure. So this is why we're talking about this today. This is on every level. Number 4 is obscure but controlled disinformants. This is a level of controlled opposition for people whom the media has not been able to steer away from orgone energy with their entry levels of disinformation. This includes orgone energy scientists who cover up Organite and cite fake experiments that were never documented as the reason for georestoration in California and the Western USA, rather than Organite gifting. They notice the changes, they notice the improvements of rain and lifting of smog and pollution, but they will say something else did it, not Organite gifting. It includes guys with half-coherent YouTube videos about how to make proper Organite and how to avoid bad Organite. The real experimenters keep it simple, and the fake ones overcomplicate and confuse people on how to make Organite. The goal is to get them not to make it or to make it incorrectly. And their stance on the energetic war? Organite is hard to make, and you'll probably mess up, so just watch some more YouTube junk. That's huge out there. And you might know what I'm talking about too. I'm not going to point the finger or name a name here. You know, when you're looking at videos on Organite that make it sound confusing, that's really detrimental to this whole mission of cleaning up the world. And the last one is the hardest one to understand and to even talk about. Online Organite communities. The hardest part of the controlled opposition to talk about is the part where we thought we had found the real truth. The fact is, different levels of consciousness can take different levels of lies. And there are some people who you almost can't fool. But even for them, there's this. At this stage, people are making Organite, seeing great results. Here they are taught how it works so incorrectly that they would sound crazy describing it to anyone else. So, you know, you would sound like completely insane if you said what these people said Organite actually does. This method keeps Organite from reaching a wider audience. Common problems with controlled websites on Organite or featuring some Organite information along with paranormal subject matter are the creation of fake and misleading Reichian terms like POR. That's a fake term. That's not a Wilhelm Reich term about Organite or orgone energy. He didn't invent Organite, by the way. He just discovered orgone energy. That also includes a hostile attitude towards the science of orgonomy. The function of orgonite is attributed to mystical beings rather than its actual energetic function and the hard work of orgonite makers and gifters. So we're talking about orgone energy and orgonite communities that are making it sound so preposterous that you would never be able to explain it to anybody or understand it yourself. And their stance on the energetic war: the government is spraying you with chemtrails, sylphs are eating them, you're still crazy, and now you have some crazy online friends too. So that's what I wanted to share from my book. My book is called Invisible Soldiers, Silent War, and I describe everything that we've done. The book is covering 2014 through 2019, everything we've done with orgonite in the field, what it's done. This is solid evidence, solid proof, I would say, and no one else is providing it. So the last one that I talked about in the controlled opposition is really, really hard to talk about because we got so much out of it. It's not like when Don Croft had his forum, it's not like it wasn't a very positive thing to get this information out there, but it's that there were such outlandish things being promoted on it that it just makes the science of orgonomy sound ridiculous, and it totally undermines all scientific research. So it's not that they didn't do good things to get the information out, but it ended up working against orgonite in a lot of ways by making us all sound like crazy new age freaks.
Well, it ensures that the topic remains cloaked in obscurity, and that's exactly the opposite of what needs to happen. Because there's so many people that are, especially in the last 2 years, that were on the fence about certain things. You gotta be able to talk to people in a way that makes them take it seriously. If you want, this reminds me like of what you were saying at you
and that's when I didn't know anything, by the way.
But what I'm saying is
that what he's talking about is a geoengineering protest we attended in 2013, as if you could actually protest interdimensional warfare. But we did go there. We didn't know it was interdimensional warfare. And I just jumped up on the cannon and gave a speech because everyone was arguing.
It's not a real cannon, by the way.
It's at Santa Monica. Let's just do this. Let's have our signs. Let's tell anybody who cares to know.
Be coherent and sensible if you want people to take this seriously.
Right.
I think that was the underlying message.
Right. And I didn't know anything back then. I didn't know about orgone energy. I didn't even know what the chemtrails really were. But the point is that we can't be dragged into arguing, and we certainly cannot. What do you say?
I agree wholeheartedly.